Hello, I'm Adrian, and today we're going to be discussing two of my favorite characters in Star Wars, Boba Fett and the Mandalorian. I would like to clarify that this video will have tons of spoilers from both the series of The Mandalorian, as well as the Book of Boba Fett and the Star Wars films in general. With that out of the way, let's take an in-depth look at the Boba Fett series, and why it wasn't as well received with fans or critics as The Mandalorian was. At the end of The Mandalorian Season 2, Boba Fett walks into what we recognize as Jabba's palace from Star Wars Episode 6, and straight up eliminates the sitting daimyo Bib Fortuna to become the new one. And fun fact, the term daimyo actually hails from Japan. Daimyo were feudal lords, who as leaders of powerful warrior bands controlled the provinces of Japan from the beginning of the Kamakura period in 1185 to the end of the Edo period in 1868. So now you can see why the term fits so well in Tatooine. In any case, Boba Fett usurps the throne once held by Jabba, and a title card informs us that his story will continue in the Book of Boba Fett. As I eagerly watched the first episode of Book of Boba Fett, while I was entertained by that opening sequence in which we finally get to see him escape the Sarlacc pit, I was a bit let down that the show seemed to have a much slower pace than The Mandalorians. As the show went on, I didn't really like watching it, which seemed weird to me considering that Boba Fett is one of my all-time favorite characters in Star Wars. Sure, things pick up in the final couple of episodes, leading to an explosive finale featuring Boba Fett, Djarin, Cad Bane, and of course, this adorable little guy, which has quickly become my mom's favorite character in all of Star Wars. But even though I really enjoyed the last few episodes, I still wanted to analyze what went wrong in the earlier ones to make them feel so off. And to get to the root of that, we need to go back a little bit to the premiere of The Mandalorian. When this show first streamed, it was truly something else. It had incredible visuals, amazing production value, an engaging storyline, at least one outstanding action sequence per episode, well thought out characters, the first appearance of arguably one of the most popular characters now, lovingly named Baby Yoda by the fans, and was just an all-around great series. Fast forward to about a year later, and Season 2 is equally as entertaining, if not more so. It was a great expansion of the Mandalorian universe, featuring appearances by fan-favorite characters like Bo-Katan, Ahsoka Tano, and Luke Skywalker himself. For me, the coolest reveal was that Boba Fett had not died in that Sarlacc pit, but had found a way to survive. The Mandalorian finally reunites him with his armor, and he proceeds to make short work of a band of stormtroopers, easily decimating their ranks with a bit of close-quarters combat and intelligent use of his projectile weapons, including firing his long-range missile, which he never got to do in the live-action films up until then. He even got to use his seismic charges with what might be the most awesome sound effect in all of Star Wars. So with that aforementioned finale of The Mandalorian, I could not wait to see what adventures lied ahead for Boba Fett, and grew progressively more disappointed with each episode that I saw. Djarin is an undeniably cool addition to the franchise, but the problem he creates for the Book of Boba Fett is that he took several of Fett's coolest aspects, leaving Boba Fett with little to do on his own show. Din Djarin is a bounty hunter, a Mandalorian with armor that looks like Boba Fett's, a man of few words, a man with a mysterious past, a man who never removes his helmet. Note how every one of those things is what Boba Fett is, or at least was supposed to be. Boba Fett was the OG who wore that armor, the bounty hunter who had the courage to speak to Vader as if he were his equal, the mysterious helmeted man who only had 4 lines of dialogue in the entire original trilogy. That being said, Mando wasn't a carbon copy of Boba either. He had a very good sense of morals and became an incredibly good father figure for Baby Yoda. This was in direct opposition to Boba, who had up until then been portrayed as a ruthless bounty hunter who continually worked with the bad guys like Jabba the Hutt and Darth Vader. However, with Boba Fett now being very much alive in the world of Star Wars, it leaves a dilemma. How do you have two versions of essentially the same character? Two mysterious armored bounty hunters who only talk when they need to. They handled it well for his appearance in Mandalorian Season 2, but now that he's the main character, it's going to be more challenging. The easy answer, and the one that they took with Boba Fett, was to completely change one of those characters into something else. Boba Fett's show couldn't also be about his adventures as a bounty hunter because they had pretty much just done that with Season 1 of The Mandalorian. That would be repeating themselves. They couldn't have Boba Fett zipping around the galaxy with a ship because The Mandalorian just did that too. He can't be a man of few words because, again, The Mandalorian is now a man of few words. He can't always leave his helmet on because that's what Mando does now. It was even written into his creed. So this led to quite a bit of changes to Boba's character and demeanor. Perhaps most distracting was that throughout the series, we rarely got to see Boba with his helmet on. He puts it on occasionally, but he's mainly seen without it. Alarmingly so, I might add, as we see him carry it around like an awkward trophy, or he uses it as part of the room decor instead of using it like the helmet it's supposed to be. Again, because Mando always wore his helmet, now Boba was the one that couldn't always wear his helmet. The mystery of how he survived in the deserts of Tatooine up until we meet him in Season 2 of The Mandalorian was also completely gone. It was exhaustively explained how he was robbed by Jawas, beaten and forced to work for the Tuskens, and eventually trained by them. As opposed to The Mandalorian, the action sequences with Boba Fett were also few and far between. Granted, the train heist sequence was exciting, but it was mainly Temuera Morrison in his pajamas instead of Boba Fett. No armor, no helmet, no blasters. Nothing there showing the iconography that is so closely associated with the character. And not only that, Boba changed from barely speaking to being quite the chatterbox, constantly talking to those around him, explaining himself and how he feels and letting people know that his name was Boba Fett, despite never once uttering a line like that in the original trilogy. But perhaps the biggest change with the character was the drastic way in which his character was rewritten. Gone was that ruthlessness which was associated with him. This was a man who was explicitly told by Vader himself that no disintegrations were allowed, but now he seems so nice. Don't get me wrong, it's always cool to see a villain redeem himself. Venom is my favorite supervillain turned anti-hero of all time, but to see it happen so suddenly and out of nowhere just felt odd. Right from the get-go, after getting captured by the Tuskens, he wanted to help the other guy that was also captured instead of just thinking about himself. A mini arc that could have happened here was that the Tuskens changed him, but even before he was taken in by them as their equal, he was already being portrayed as not ruthless, but compassionate. After the flashbacks, Boba doesn't have much to do other than stroll around the streets of Tatooine with Fennec and his army of 2 goons. Even when he's given an opportunity to show some backbone, he's always portrayed as so nice and polite. When the mayor's slimy assistant is totally disrespecting him in his palace, and later in the mayor's office, he doesn't just blast him or even threaten to do so. And when Fennec threatens harm to that assistant, Boba Fett remarks that perhaps that was a bit heavy-handed. What? Why would he say that? If anything, Fennec should be the one trying to hold him back, as she rightfully does in the final episode with Cad Bane during their initial standoff. Then there are the meme-worthy moments like the brightly colored Vespa-like speeder bikes that would even embarrass the Power Rangers. Then there's the fact that the setting of the first few episodes is so bland and repetitive. Nothing but his base, the bar, the mayor's office, and the deserts of Tatooine. Over and over again. He doesn't even get cool fight scenes early on. Boba Fett does get to beat up some bikers in a bar, but he also gets thrown around like a rag doll with no armor and is promptly defeated by these guys too. And he of course did not have his helmet on since he removes it every single chance he gets. So far in this video, we've been exploring the writing behind the Book of Boba Fett. And if you'd be interested in learning more about writing science fiction, I highly recommend Lincoln Michelle's class Science Fiction and Fantasy, Creating Unique and Powerful Worlds. It's an entertaining writing class that goes through the basics of creating and writing a great science fiction story. He goes over things unique to the genre, such as what he calls the ripple effect, or what happens when you change something in reality and how that changes different aspects of society and life. He also discusses world building, or how one creates fictional realities, whether it's a fictional world, city, or galaxy. If all of this sounds interesting to you, you could try it out for free by just clicking on the link in the description below. The first 1,000 people to use this link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. I personally joined Skillshare because it's helped in refining skills and hobbies I've been interested in. If you've seen my other videos, you've known that I've learned great tips to better my drawing, as well as leveling up my technique with the bow staff, and my martial arts skills too. Skillshare offers a vast array of classes on varied topics like photography, language, graphic design, illustration, and martial arts. There are no ads, and classes are broken down into individual segments that are automatically saved when you complete watching them. The whole catalog also has subtitles in Spanish and French, among other languages. So if you'd like to start your own journey of discovery on whatever topic you'd like, click the link in the description. Returning to Boba, I was so disenchanted by the show that I didn't recommend watching it to my friends or family. I even told my brother, who's also a huge Star Wars fan, not to watch it, since I found it all to be so underwhelming and boring. But then, Chapter 5 premiered, and everything suddenly clicked. The Mandalorian walks into a random meat locker and recites his line he said in his pilot not so long ago. Then the darksaber is wielded. And then you get amazing production value with each location he's in. Suddenly there are more than a couple people on screen at a time. Suddenly you are back in the world of Star Wars. Before you know it, Mando's new ship is a retooled Naboo fighter from episode 1. He even takes it through the same course that Anakin did on his pod racer. Luke Skywalker shows up, and Baby Yoda's here. Mando's recruited by Fennec to help Boba, and they're backed into a corner, and now they're fighting back, and Boba's finally wearing his helmet. And you get the point. it just becomes an insanely fun and entertaining Star Wars adventure. I immediately told my family and friends to see it from chapter 5 onwards, and was glad the production crew gave the series such an awesome finale. But it was sad that in order to be such an awesome finale, Boba had to be sidelined in it. The visual, storyline, production value, and action sequences really didn't kick into high gear until Mando showed up. Then it all made sense. The Book of Boba Fett was never meant to be a series dedicated to Boba Fett. It was meant to be a budget-saving mini-season of The Mandalorian. With Disney launching multiple Star Wars projects, besides just The Mandalorian, there simply wasn't enough time or money to do a full season of it. So they did the next best thing, make it a mini-series event and introduce it under the banner of Boba Fett. That way you get to make 4 episodes on the cheap with minimal sets, costumes, actors, crew, and production design, and save it all for 3 amazing Mandalorian episodes. Boba Fett was just filler episodes before we got to an extended preview of Mandalorian Season 3. And this brings us back to the underlying Mandalorian problem with Boba Fett moving forward. There are an innumerable amount of stories that could be explored with Boba Fett before the events of Episode 6. But because that would be treading dangerously close to what is already being done with The Mandalorian, that's not likely something that's going to happen anytime soon. So instead we deal with the period that happens after Episode 6. And because Boba Fett can't be too similar to Djarin, which is a bit silly to think about considering Mando owes all his coolest aspects to Boba, Boba Fett has been forced to change it to something else. He removes his helmet now, he's a nice guy now, he doesn't want to be a bounty hunter now, he rarely uses a ship now. In an effort to make him so different from the Mandalorian, they've put Fett in a place that even he doesn't really want to be in, as he's even semi-complaining to Fennec by the end of the show. Boba Fett needs to do something else, go somewhere else, even be someone else. But not this. This video was brought to you by Skillshare. I'd like to thank each one of my Patreon members as their contribution helped in the making of this video. If you'd like to contribute and appear in the credits in the future, my Patreon page is Godzilla Rex and it's in the description below. Thanks for watching. What do you think of the Book of Boba Fett? Let me know in the comments below, subscribe for more awesome videos, and see you next time.